Hi, I'm Dr. Joe Blaes, editor of Dental Economics, and we're here at the ADA annual meeting in Las Vegas, Nevada. And with me today is Dr. Roger Levin, and we're here to talk about the annual dental practice survey in dental economics. Actually, this year it is in a pullout from dental economics called the Financial Black Book. And we're just going to kind of talk a little bit about some of the highlights in that survey. And Roger, you wrote this. What did you find most significant in this year's practice survey?
Sure. Well, it's really a pleasure to be part of the dental economics team and to have an opportunity to do the research to determine what's happening in dentistry today. And the wonderful finding, I'm really glad to report, because we're at the American Dental Association meeting where there's a lot of energy now, because we have hit the bottom of the dental economic recession, and that's good news. In fact, as I'm telling you this, we have probably grown in production this year between 4.4 and 5.8%. So we've had some rough years. 2009 and 2010 were decline years. A lot of practices were off in production between 12 and 18% over that 2 years. But now we've hit the bottom, we're bouncing back, and I'm really glad to be able to sit here and report that we're on our way to recovery. Having said that, it's very important to understand, and we surveyed hundreds of dental practices to get this data, that while we're having a better year, we've got a 5 to 6 year probable economic run before we move out of this sluggish economy. Now, 4 years ago, practices were on fire, but one of the reasons they were growing so quickly was the same reason so many United States businesses and worldwide businesses were growing quickly. Consumers were buying. And I've spent a lot of time, Joe, looking at a new consumer purchasing psychology study by a Fortune 500 consulting firm, and I'm very clear that 4 years ago, people were buying much more impulsively than today. So what we're finding today that's really fantastic is we're bouncing back, but practices need to be more proactive than ever before when it comes to their management and marketing systems. It's not enough just to wait out the economy. It's important to take steps to move the practice forward, to operate in the best way, and then that 4.4% natural growth could easily become 9, 10, 12, or 14% created growth. And that's exciting to report after a few years of sluggishness.
That is exciting. What are some of the steps to get over this next 6 year period? What are some of the steps that you would recommend?
Sure. Well, Joe, like you, I do a lot of lecturing. So you and I are out there almost every week giving seminars somewhere in the United States. And the great thing about being around the country is you get to really hear what people are thinking.
Absolutely.
And I can tell you what we're recommending. We've created a 3-step method that's very different than 4 years ago. And the 3 steps are: number 1, set targets; number 2, create systems to achieve the targets; and number 3, use a technique we call value creation scripting to make the systems work better. Now, as quick definitions, in the past, dentists showed up at the office. We know that even today, 80% of dentists, and we have a lot of data at Levin Group, which you'll see in the Financial Black Book, so make sure you take a really good look at that piece. And we know that 80% of dentists are not on salary. They don't take a salary, they take what's left at the end of the month. What that tells us is there's no real budgeting, no metric analysis. Now, I'm not trying to turn dentists into accountants. You and I are dentists. We know that we're not going to sit around on weekends studying charts and graphs. That's not what this is about. But there are about 15 to 18 key targets that need to be set for a practice, such as having 98% of all your patients scheduled at all times, having 99% collections, when you're collecting money, having no more than a 1% overdue rate or non-collectible, less than a 1% no-show rate, and I could go on, but you get the idea.
Right.
Once the targets are set, okay, now you have a plan, but that doesn't make it happen. So you then create step-by-step systems for the doctor and the team. The difference is 4 years ago we created systems for our clients and they grew. That wouldn't work today. Now we create systems to achieve the targets. They're very specifically designed to make those targets happen, and every month now you can measure your progress. You're above the target, on target, or below target. And you can do it in literally 10 to 12 minutes a month. The third part I'll cover very quickly, but is fantastic, is called value creation scripting. Up until 4 years ago, we did a tremendous amount of scripts training for our client practices. Scripting was about communication. That isn't good enough anymore either. And based on the work of a PhD in the science of influence that I was exposed to, and then we studied in depth, we created a concept that anyone can use called value creation scripting, where the real purpose of scripting is not communication, but is influence. And what are we influencing? We're influencing patients to follow our systems so we hit the targets and we have a growing practice each year. And I'll end by saying that one of the targets is your practice should be growing by a minimum of 15% this year. This is the year where if natural growth is 4 to 5%, taking the right steps, you can be at 10 to 15%.
That's great, Roger. And I know you've had the same experience as you were out lecturing and traveling. You found practices that were doing well.
Absolutely.
And when I questioned those practices, they had those three things in place, and they were moving ahead.
Absolutely. I mean, we have to keep in mind that in the worst part of the recession, 25% of dental practices were still growing. Let's model what they're doing, teach it to everybody that would like to learn it, and then allow them to grow as well. Absolutely.
Fantastic. Roger, as always, so great to see you, and thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much.